We have a very special crossover episode today. Of course, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, Jacob Milham of the Royals Rundown podcast. Let's talk about this 8-11 start next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and that's Jacob Milham joining me in the other screen here if you are watching on YouTube. But if you're not watching on YouTube, very easy to find both of our podcasts. Just check it out on wherever you download your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, and of course, YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow and subscribe button for both of us. And before we get started today, want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. So let's not waste any time here, Jacob. We don't do these crossover episodes all the time, so I don't want to waste any little minute that we may have here. And I'm so glad you were able to join today because then we've got some time before they will take on Detroit in game one later on about 5:40 tonight. But their first sweep of the season comes at the hands of the New York Yankees. It's not like getting swept by the White Sox. It's not like getting swept by the Rockies, who they'll see next week. But you walk into that series, and my first question to you is, if I would have said they give up 4 runs in each of those 3 games to the New York Yankees with the offense they have, how many wins would you say they walk away with? Because I certainly thought it should be more than a big old 0.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Jack. Like I would have said 2 at the beginning of the season. You know, that is a very high-powered lineup that the Royals pitching staff, you know, I wouldn't say they made them look pedestrian, but they held them to average numbers. You have multiple former MVPs in that lineup, and the starting pitching was, I think it was solid, if not great, from Chris Bubich, Michael Wacha. They exceeded my expectations against the New York Yankees. But yeah, I was not expecting a sweep, to say the least.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I don't feel you walk away from it thinking they played horribly because the starting rotation was fine. The bullpen, you know, Angel Serpa had his mistakes on Tuesday night. John Schreiber made a mistake to Aaron Judge on Wednesday night. But if you wanted to spin it optimistically, which you never really should do after a sweep, but I'm more so looking big picture here. I mean, the pitching looks legit yet again, and I've almost viewed it as, man, if you can give them 4 runs a night. I mean, I believe it was last year's offense averaged a little over 4 runs a game. Like, you put that together in these first 19 games, they're winning the majority of these, but the offense, they're just not clicking right now. So can you take it and go, hey, it's a rough stretch right now, but it is a lot of great pitching they're facing. And once they face those lesser opponents, those 4-run nights, those 5-run nights will be a little bit more attainable than they are right now.
Yeah, one of the most beautiful things about baseball is it is such a long season, and it does have a tendency to balance itself out across that season. You know, I know everyone's looking at, you know, batting averages. Let's just say that in the Royals lineup and pointing to Salvi and saying, well, he's not performing. He's not meeting expectations. You go and you look at some of his expected numbers and some of his parts of the process, if you will. Salvi is doing great in that fact. And I would expect that eventually we'll see a hot stretch from him. You know, he's hitting his dingers. He's getting those doubles. He's getting those RBI. But just right now, that's not happening. But I trust that will happen later on in the season. And I would trust the same for the Kansas City Royals as a whole. If my math serves correctly, they're 6-11 right now when they score 4 or less runs. Frankly, the fact that they have 6 wins when they're scoring 4 or less runs is pretty impressive. But it is just frustrating that so many of the games so far in this young season have seen an anemic attack from the Royals in the run scoring department. It's there are positive spins, but unfortunately, it's going to be hard for Royals fans out there to feel good about those positives until we get some more W's in the win column.
Well, Jacob, it feels like we see a stretch like this every single year from this team. It just feels different when it's the first 19 games of the year. Like last year, I want to say there were two separate times. It was right around mid to end of June. They get swept in Arlington by the Rangers. Want to say they only got 2 or 3 runs in that series. They can't score off the Marlins. They can't score off the Rockies. And it felt like a doomsday moment. And that cushion they had built at the beginning of the year had evaporated, basically. And then we see it in the most crucial time when they lose 7 in a row. They lose Vinny Pasquantino, and that felt like a doomsday moment. So what I would try to say now is you're exactly right. Baseball is such a long season where this stretch is going to end eventually, but it's probably going to happen again at some point that'll make us all rip our hair out. It's just such a long season. And right now, what you're seeing is an offense that is led by one man. And it's one of the best players, if not the best player in baseball, in Bobby Witt Jr. What I'm looking for, and what I'm sure you're looking for, is just the contributions from the guys you're also counting on. We can talk about MJ Melendez and Renfroe and Isbell all the live long day, but we need more from Jonathan India. We need more from Vinny. We need more from Salvi and Massey, because those guys are a strong supporting cast when they're hitting well, and right now they're just simply not.
Yeah, and exactly. And I was talking about this on social media last night, and it just, the game as a whole felt so different when, Drew Waters had that hit and Kyle Isbell batted him around on that RBI triple. Those are the contributors that, like, hey, if the bottom half of the lineup can score just one run in every single game this year, how different does this Royals team feel? We've just gotten so used to, unfortunately, a black hole from 5 through 9. That's just the reality of it. And yeah, you point out a lot of guys who probably aren't drawing as much heat right now, especially a Michael Massey and Jonathan India. Those guys are not meeting expectations, and we're just not focusing on them too much because, unfortunately, there are worse guys in the lineup than even those guys. I just got to trust the process, and hopefully they right the ship sooner rather than later. We're frustrated about it. Fans are frustrated about it, but you better believe that the guys in that clubhouse are even more livid about what they're doing on the field.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, these guys understand, obviously going off of last year, they understand what it takes to be a winning baseball team and a playoff team. But what's different from last year is you do have something to go off of. Whereas last year, when they were slipping, when they were struggling, they couldn't say, well, we've done this before. No, the majority of those guys had never won more than 65 games in their career. I mean, they had only played losing baseball. And so the fact they responded well to that, got to the postseason, won a series, won one game in the ALDS, they've got that pedigree to get it done. And so far, I do believe it's a combination of guys are not playing well. That is an obvious statement, but also maybe running into some teams that you could say, hey, it's good to run into them now, right? To get the Yankees in New York out of the way in April, much better than having to go down there in September when maybe everybody's firing or maybe the playoffs are on the line at this point. Playoffs are not decided in April. We all know that. And we'll be talking about this Detroit series coming up. It is a big one, mainly because they've now got that opportunity to gain some ground of the team that they're 2.5 games back from. I mean, think about that. They're 8-11 and they're 2.5 games back in the AL Central. Splitting with Detroit, you probably feel good. You take 3 or 4, you feel really good. We're not going to go as far to say they're sweeping them when they've got, Jackson Jobe and Tarek Skubal and Casey Mize throwing in this series. But again, the Royals rotation, which will end with this point here on the first segment, the Royals rotation is one now where teams have to be fearful of, where Detroit's going, hey, we scored 1 run in the last 2 games of that Milwaukee series. Now we got to see Seth Lugo, Cole Reagans, even Michael Lorenzen has been a really good number 5, but we get Waka, who had pitched really well in New York before the collapse on Tuesday night. Like, have they gotten to that status where for so many years, Jacob, When the Royals would go to a series, you're going, man, we got to see that guy and this guy. Like 1 through 5, the Royals rotation is loaded right now, and they're pitching very well. So do you see other teams going, man, it doesn't really matter who we're facing. This is going to be tough to scratch across more than 4 runs?
I think so, because there's no glaring weak spot one through 5. Usually an average playoff contending team, you'll have to go like, oh man, it's going to be a tough one against their 1 through 3, but we'll get right against their number 4, number 5 guy, whether it's like a new call up or a guy coming off the IL. That's not the case in Kansas City. Michael Lorenz, and people forget he was an all-star with those Detroit Tigers. He's a pretty good pitcher in his own right, and Chris Bubich is just one of the hottest pitchers in baseball. I get it, he wasn't stellar last night, but still 6 punch outs and 5 1/3 is nothing to be too upset about. And there's no lull. It's a constant. We have to push against the Royals, and we have to make their mistakes count the most. That's kind of where I see the rotation at right now.
All right, we're going to take our first break here. When we come back, Jacob and I are going to go over the pros and the cons of this 19-game start. They will head into Detroit tonight to wrap up their road trip with a 4-game series in Motown. It'll be Michael Lorenzen on the bump going up against Reese Olson. We'll talk about that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and joining me is Jacob Milham from the Royals Rundown Podcast. Go give them a follow. They do fantastic work. I've been on their show a few times. It's so much fun. Have a blast doing it. And I'm so happy that Jacob could join us today, because we certainly have a lot to get into. But before we move on to our next segment, a couple sponsors to tell you about. Number one being Amazon Fire TV. Did you know that Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn on any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football's 2025 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6. And as easily as you stream your favorite shows, you can make the gaming simple as well, all on your Fire TV. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. Also want to let you know about our title sponsor today in Gametime. There's nothing better than catching an MLB game live, the crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, and the smell of ballpark's food. And if you're looking to go last minute, Gametime makes getting tickets easier than ever. With last-minute deals, all-in pricing, and lowest price guaranteed, Gametime takes the stress out of buying MLB tickets. Plus, ticket prices drop as Gametime gets closer, meaning you could score an incredible deal. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Well, Jacob, let's dive into the pros and cons of this team so far. The run differential, it doesn't look good. They're coming off a sweep. It's been a 1-5 road trip, and now you get blessed with facing the top team in your division to try to right the ship. But is there a pro in this of, all right, the offense is one of the worst in baseball right now. There is no getting around that. Every stat you bring up, they are bottom 5 in it, and that shouldn't surprise anybody. The bottom of their lineup is not hitting, really outside of Kyle Isbell. The top of their lineup, other than Bobby Witt Jr., is not hitting. So you have these numbers that are comparable to the White Sox, to the Rockies, and they're 8-11 because the pitching has been top 5 in nearly every single category. So is it correct in saying, hey, a pro can be that offense is playing worse than 95% of baseball, yet they're a good series away from being about 500? Or do you say, well, if we're going to talk about the offense being this bad, we also can't say the rotation's going to be this good or the bullpen's going to be this good for the remaining part of the year? Where do you stand on that?
I stand with the latter for the most part. You know, it's easy to forget that a guy like Michael Walker last year, right? He had a pretty rough start to the season, and yeah, he found that elite form after I want to say May of last year through the rest of the season. But even though these guys are going out of the bump every 5 days, they can have some fluctuations in their performance as well, and fans should expect that. Um, it is unfortunate that the rotation is so good right now, and the lineup is not holding up their end of the bargain. That's how I see it. It should be, if you want a winning team, you got to have some sort of a balance. And if both units are hot, cool, then you're going to win a lot of games. If one unit is hot, well, then you're going to win some games. If neither is hot, well, shoot, you ain't going to win none, and you'll be in the Chicago White Sox basement. Right now, though, I do see it as a pro, to a point that you made on social media at Locked On Royals, that they are seeing so many former playoff teams this early in the season, right? I think the number you found was 6. They're playing against 6 playoff teams from last year. That's a lot, and that's double than at what they're going to see at any point in the coming months. Like, it's like 3 and 2 and 3 and 2. That's okay. They can weather that storm, but they don't have a break. They don't have a day off against these good teams. So I see it as a pro, like, hey, if we're going to get a rough stretch, I guess might as well get it out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, that is something with as long as the baseball season is, you can find peace in. Whereas, I mean, I would say you go over the Royals' history, you take out last year and 2021 and probably 2015, they don't play well in April. Whatever reason it may be, they just don't play well in April. And when I saw this schedule when it came out last year, I went, it's going to be a pretty tough April, but you feel good about, hey, maybe they'll be aggressive in free agency. They'll build a roster that can weather that storm. That's how I'm seeing it. If they can weather the storm, now you can start to build a cushion later on in the coming months. But it's also easier said than done to just weather the storm. I mean, hell, they could go into Detroit this weekend, get swept. They're on a 7-game losing streak. They won 1 of 10 on a road trip. And yeah, you got the Colorado Rockies coming to town, but you're going to be 8-15 at that point. Season's not over. I mean, we saw from the team they're seeing this weekend, Detroit was 10 to 15 games under 500 in August before they went on a ridiculous tear. But I also will say, you don't want it to be like that. You don't want to have this ridiculous tear where you're the best team in baseball in the last month of the season. It sounds great, but that also means you've buried yourself and put yourself in a tough spot to begin the year. Now, with this offense, right, we're talking about Walker and Lugo, and those are two guys I say, you're not going to expect Seth Lugo to throw you 220 innings again. You're not going to expect Michael Walker to give you 180 plus again. You got to find some innings from other guys that maybe you didn't count on last year. But when it comes to this offense, when we are talking about regression or maybe guys just doing what they did last year, I constantly go back to Vinny Pasquantino and I go back to Michael Massey. And I say, last year, both of those guys were league average hitters or slightly above league average. Of course, Vinny was going to drive in 100 plus if he didn't fracture his thumb. Probably would have gotten north of 110 if we're being honest, which is a great season by every single metric. You drive in that many runs, we can, make sense of the fact that you've had a great season. But was that the outlier? Was Michael Massey being a league average hitter an outlier? Or is that something now where going into this year you go, no, I feel that Vinny and Massey have given a large enough sample size where they're not a 200 hitter. They're not a 170 hitter. These guys are a 265 hitter and probably a 260 hitter.
Yeah, I would. Both of those guys, I think that Royals fans are and should give them the benefit of the doubt. But there is, I wouldn't expect what Vinny did when he was healthy last year to be perfectly replicated in 2025. My co-host, Jeremy Greco, had some high expectations for Vinny, and he exceeded that. I had some more middle-of-the-road expectations, and he blew past that. And I think it is, you can recognize a good season and not expect that player to have that good season year in and year out. Now, Michael Massey, I do have a little bit less trust in than Vinny, but I still have trust in him. And, we've seen how different this lineup looks when he's hitting, when we're getting production from that 5-hole, from the 6-hole, things like that. So I think that we should give them the benefit of the doubt when we talk about those two guys specifically, Jack.
And another guy I might want to throw into that conversation is Jonathan India. Now, Jonathan India has had a far better track record each and every single year than those two guys. Vinny's dealt with the injury problems. Michael Massey's not been a league average hitter his entire career. Whereas Jonathan India, the Royals brought him in to bring that stability at the top of the order. And I don't know. I do question right now if he's just playing through that quad injury, because he is still getting on base a little bit. But, we know Jonathan India's not going to hit 180 this year. And that's where he's at. And in April, man, you get a 3-hit game, you go from 180 to 230 or 240. Kyle Isbell went from what was it? A $110 to 280 or 300, it felt like, in one series against the Minnesota Twins. But do you feel that maybe he's playing through injury right now, and then when he gets healthy, let's say, May or June, they're going to ask him about this, and he's going to say, yeah, I wasn't 100% back in April, but now I feel good, and we're definitely going to see it at the plate.
Yeah, I think he is playing through something right now. Just in baseball, there's no getting around that you can't use your lower body, right? I get it. We see everything in the hands and in the torque in the upper half, but you still have to have that solid base. And I do think that Jonathan India is playing through an injury. We have seen in the past Royals players do this, and they are competitors at the end of the day. But one part of that coaching staff is sometimes you have to recognize, okay, we need to kind of protect this player from himself. And if the coaching staff isn't wanting to do that, that's their decision and that's their job on the line. But I think that him playing through that is going to make his stats look worse, and that is going to make his role as the setup man ahead of Bobby Witt Jr. is going to decrease that production pretty significantly. But I hope he's fully healthy by around early May if he is playing through something.
All right, we're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, I'll ask Jacob if the AL Central is scaring you so far, or is this just who that division is going to be? That's coming up on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. That's Jacob Milham of the Royals Rundown Podcast. Go give them a follow and subscribe to their channel. And before we wrap up today's special crossover episode, want to let you know about one more sponsor in PrizePicks. Basketball and the hockey playoffs are heating up, and there's no better way to turn your sports knowledge into real rewards than with PrizePicks, the easiest way and the most exciting way to play daily fantasy. With PrizePicks, you simply pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and you're in. You can even combine players across sports like basketball, hockey, baseball, and more for your chance to win up to 2,000 times your money. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play that first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Well, as we brought up so many times, Jacob, in this episode today, they get the top team in the Central, the Detroit Tigers, this weekend. It's a 4-game series, a big one to get back on track. But almost the humorous part of that is when I say the top team in the Central, it is only by definition because they're in first place. Like, we don't know who the best team in this division will be until it's all said and done, in my opinion. I mean, Cleveland was in first place forever last year. And then the Royals take over first place in late August, something we didn't believe was going to be possible when Cleveland's up like 9 games in July. They had an absolute collapse. Goes back to show you how long this season is. But is Detroit a team, and is Cleveland a team? And Minnesota, they caught a little bit of fire after having the series win against the Mets. Do you feel that this division is going to be better than last year? I mean, hell, they sent 3 teams to the postseason, but also because they were able to beat up on the White Sox. Everybody was able to beat up on the White Sox, which got them in to 2 wild card spots. But is it one where you go, man, seeing the Tigers on the schedule, that's tough. Seeing Cleveland on the schedule, that's tough. Or is this, man, it's not that strong, and the Royals should be very fortunate that they are still very much in the running to grab first place by maybe even the end of next weekend?
It's such a weird situation right now, Jack, because that's not just the AL Central. That feels like the AL as a whole.
It's
like
true.
there isn't an AL club that's just running away with it. I do think the Royals are still fortunate to be only 2.5 back after their start to the season, but I think Royals fans should, circle those series against the Detroit Tigers and the Cleveland Guardians on their calendars as like, hey, these are going to be tough ones. These are going to be slobber knockers, for lack of a better term. Now, a lot of the Minnesota Twins have relied on a lot of their star power over the years, and I don't think that the front office and ownership have invested enough in that supporting cast in Minnesota. I don't foresee them being a super tough team for the rest of 2025. And now we all know where the Chicago White Sox are at, so we're not even going to dive down that rabbit hole. To answer, I know I'm going in a long way to answer your question, Jack. I do apologize. The AL Central does not scare me as much as it did ahead of this season, for a lack of better terms. Like, I was worried about the Minnesota Twins, but I wasn't really worried about the Cleveland Guardians. Now the Cleveland Guardians have proven, hey, we're still who we are. We're still who we've always been. We might not have the top tier star power, but we're going to get the best out of the guys that we have on the roster. And the Detroit Tigers, I don't feel like a lot of their individuals have lived up to the offseason hype. But, I mean, that team is still firmly in first place, so kudos to them.
They are, and I was somebody that picked Detroit to win the AL Central. I thought with the combination of Skubal and Flaherty, I mean, we can't also rule out Casey Mize and Reese Olson and now, Jackson Joe being their number 5. That's a ridiculous rotation we're talking about. Their bullpen is very serviceable, and they've got guys in their lineup like the Royals do that you count on. Riley Green when he's healthy, Parker Meadows, Spencer Torkelson's had a great start to the year. So is Gleyber Torres. But I love that you bring up what the AL has looked like, because the AL West has been arguably worse than the AL Central. Houston's not looking as good, but they also didn't start well last year. The Mariners continue to be that team led by their rotation, not a great offense. The Angels being near the top early on, that tells you a lot of what you need to know about the AL West start. But I'm more so focused on the AL East. And this sounds really dumb to say after the Royals just got swept in New York. And maybe if they would have taken one game, this would have a little bit more merit to it. But when the Royals played the Yankees 3 times last year, like in the Bronx in September, they saw them in Kansas City in June, and then, of course, in the ALDS, like they just didn't seem like they were on the same playing field. Like that series in Kansas City in June, the Yankees had like a plus 110 run differential and just smacked the Royals for 3 games, and it took a walk-off in Game 4 to avoid a 4-game sweep. It was closer in September, and then we saw what happened in the postseason. I didn't get that same vibe from the Yankees in this series. Like, that's a very good team. One I believe is going to win the AL East, is likely going to be the number 1 seed. But if the Royals do find themselves back in October and you're going up against the Yankees in the ALDS or the ALCS, I just go back to, man, it's different to face that lineup when there's no Juan Soto. I mean, we cannot rule that how big that was for the Yankees to go from, and even we'll say Gleyber Torres a little bit, to go from Torres to Juan Soto to Aaron Judge to Giancarlo Stanton. Like, who knows if Stanton's going to be healthy? And we saw in this Yankee series, they were led by their pitching and their bullpen. Their offense was fine. They got hits when it mattered. But you also go to the Orioles, who have had a bad start to this year, and their rotation is not as good as it once was. Toronto brought in Santander, and they've been fine so far, but Vladdy Jr. just hit his first home run of the year yesterday. Boston, they seem hit and miss, and they probably had one of the better off seasons, in my opinion. So that wide open American League, it's not so much of, oh, I am buying into everything that's happening right now. It's more so of, looking to the future, because we know the buyers are going to be aggressive. The Yankees will probably try to go after a couple people at the deadline. But if the Royals get into October, it doesn't feel like so much of a miracle run if they get their foot in the door. Where last year, if they would have beaten the Yankees, you go, man, that's one of the bigger upsets I can remember. This year, if it happens again and they do win, and it, like I said, it sounds idiotic after they just got swept, but it's not the same Yankees team, and we all know it's not the same Yankees team. Baltimore's different. Detroit's different. Cleveland's different this year. And some of those teams subtracted from last year. So do you feel that, man, it's one of those years where get your foot in the door and you might have a better chance? Or is it, hey, don't pay attention to that. You got to win your division so you can make that path easier on yourself?
No, I think this is certainly one of those years that if you get your foot into a wild card spot or one of the lower division winners, I think that there is room for that in the American League. There are clear tiers in the NL. That isn't the case in the AL right now, and the overall standings are reflective of that. Now, to the Yankees specifically, I want to double down on what you said, because last year when they faced the Yankees, it clearly felt like Kansas City was the overmatched team. The Yankees had better strategy, they had better talent, things like that. But I think that if we revisit the Yankees series in about a month or so, Royals fans would feel a little bit better about it, because it was, for all the issues with the lineup, it was still a very competitive series, I felt like. Now, I hope that, the Royals wouldn't face a sweep in the postseason like they did against the Yankees just this week. But I do think that this is one of those years where there's no clear juggernaut in the American League. If the Royals get their guys who are supposed to be producing better, if they meet those expectations, then anything can happen with these Royals. And if we have another aggressive trade deadline from JJ Piccolo in that front office, then I don't know, optimism should rise amongst Royals fans. But right now, I get it, we're down in the dumps, we're fresh off of a sweep, so it does feel a little silly to talk about this, but we got to look at the entire season. We have so much season ahead of us, folks.
We really do. And that's what I keep going back to. Man, this stretch has not been very pretty to watch, but I'm sorry to say it's going to happen again. Maybe not over 20 games. It might be over 6 to 7 games. But there's also going to be stretches where you go, man, they got everything clicking right now. And last point I'll make before I want to get your final prediction for this series going into Detroit, the trade deadline. Like, if the Royals are in it, I have 99.9% confidence JJ Piccolo is going to be very aggressive, especially when it comes to adding a corner outfield bat. Why? Because they didn't get it done in the offseason. And that almost felt like okay, the prices aren't meeting right now, that the matching point is not meeting. We'll just revisit this at the deadline. Maybe that means Taylor Ward. Maybe that means somebody else that can truly impact the lineup. But if they survive until the end of July with the current roster they have, and maybe Jack Caglione can have some help along the way, then they could put their chips in a little bit and say, our rotation's good, our bullpen's good. We need offensive help for the postseason, because that's what bit us in the ass at the very end of last year. The offense wasn't good enough to face a lineup like the New York Yankees. Okay, Jacob, again, really appreciate your time. Last prediction here. Do the Royals right the ship in Detroit? You don't have to make your prediction for tonight, but do you see a split? 3 of 4, or is this going to continue and they only take 1 of 4, or maybe even get swept in a 4-game series?
I feel comfortable thinking that they're going to split this series. 2-2 against the Tigers. We're still going to see some of the problems that we've seen to start off this season, but some individual performances are going to power those 2 wins. But what do you think, Jack? Are they going to win this series or not?
Oh, man, I do believe a lot of it comes down to tonight. You got Michael Lorenzen on the bump. You got Reese Olson. And then after that, you're going to be seeing Jackson Jobe, but you counter with Cole Reagans. And then you're going to see Casey Mize. And Tarek Skubal is Tarek Skubal. The Royals, oddly enough, have good numbers against. I don't know what it was last year, but they had good numbers against him. I don't know if that will continue, but I believe I'm with you. It feels like a safe pick to go split, mainly because, Detroit's coming in not hitting that well. Now, I'd say that, and the Yankees starting rotation wasn't pitching well going into that series, and then they held the Royals, under 4 runs in all of those games. So I'm going to go with the split. But again, tonight, it does matter for my opinion there. If they win tonight, it's still a tall task to win 2 more in that series, but that percentage goes way, way up. And if they lose tonight, now you're 8-12. You have a 4-game slide. You're 1-6 on the road trip. I have a hard time believing that they're going to be able to have that split there. But Jacob, thanks so much for doing this. We're absolutely going to have to do this moving forward in the season. Just catching up every once in a while to get an evaluation for where this team is at. But thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jack. I really appreciate it. You do well by your listeners, so keep doing what you're doing, man.
I appreciate it. Well, there he goes. That's Jacob Milham of the Royals Rundown podcast. Definitely go give them a follow. They do fantastic work, and look forward to this moving forward in the future. We'll probably have more crossover episodes this season. But that'll do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. That's been Jacob Milham. And for tomorrow, gear up for another Mailbag Friday. Send in your questions to my Twitter handle, or you can just leave them below on this YouTube video below. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.